welcome to Inner Compass. And today on this podcast, we're going to be navigating through life's big question, through wisdom, of course, from both modern and ancient times. My name is Lovetti, Lafua, and today we're going to be delving in the incredible journey where we will talk about the ancestral birthing. I am so excited to be your host on this program. Okay, whether you're pregnant, you are trying to conceive, or you are just interested in knowing how our ancestors brought life into this world, then this episode is really for you. So make sure you stay tuned. On this episode, we're going to be exploring different birthing processes. So today we're going to be talking about the Aboriginals and the Torres Island cultures. We're also going to be talking about the African cultures and beyond. We'll just talk about all of these things that are interesting for anybody who wants to know. It is really important to understand these things because when you have a deeper understanding as to how it was done and why it was done, it makes you want to make a right decision, what works for you. We'll also discuss ancient approaches, compare them to modern system, and try to see how to reconnect them and its benefit to our today's life. This episode is for anyone who's looking forward to align their pregnancy and birthing journey from their inner compass, innate wisdom, and draw strength from ancestral knowledge. So let's dive in. Let's begin with the ancestral wisdom of the Aboriginals and the Torres Strait Islander peoples. These communities are deeply rooted in their land, their spirit, and their communities. So this is a path of a birthing process for them. Compared to today's, it's a bit different. I've had discussions with people where they tell me that, they were just birthing because of the location. No, I think it has a lot more to do with their origin, their roots. You know what I mean? I don't believe that it was about the location. It was about grounding the baby and the mother in a holistic spiritual, framework that they had really contact with their ancestors. I think that's the way they did it, it makes sense to me because you see that over time it repeats itself in history books to see that women would always go to a certain area to give birth or do it a certain way in a community setting where their sisters, their mothers, or other elderly midwives are around. Now, this is something that has gone on over the years. Like I said, it has been dated back to about 60,000, which I think it might be more, but let's put it on 60,000 on this concept so that we have something to hold on to. These people actually labor around their family members, their loved one, elderly people who had wisdom than they did. This is also very similar with the African people, but we'll go to that. Let's talk about the Aborigines right now. So they had this very community setting that was deeply rooted in their lives, that had a whole meaning for them. For them, it was more or less like the yin-yang thing, not separating, you know what I mean? They also had midwives, so they might not have been, gone to universities or studied for it, but these were wise women who knew exactly what the mother wanted, and their care, that's the most amazing part that I found out was that their care was tailored to the uniqueness of a woman. So there wasn't a sort of a whole lot of, you'd say, this is the practice and this is the protocol and this is how we do it. No, it didn't work that way with the Aboriginals and the Torres Islanders people. It worked so that everyone was unique to a certain kind of care. It begs the question, therefore, why are we the way we are today? There is a certain standard that you have to, for instance, open 1 hour, 1 centimeter. And in those days, it was something totally different. We have all been so medicalized. This is not to say that medical system is wrong, but we have been so medicalized and we are all put under one umbrella, which makes it really, really difficult for people to find their individuality or get the individual care that they need. Not to mention the whole hospital thing, if you have to go to the hospital. Of course, I respect and agree to that, but not to mention how you would have a certain standard of intervention that must be done. I think personally that this is doing more harm because people are being stripped of their individuality. Women are not given the opportunity to birth the way they would want to birth. I think this whole thing of the Aboriginal and the Torres Islander people can also be integrated in the healthcare system. Totally. One very good way that can be done is maybe by incorporating doulas into the hospital system, where doulas will take care of the women the way they know that a wise woman should. And maybe as well midwives, holistic midwives like me, people who like to birth in a very natural setting area. Okay, this is another one. Let's go to Africa, a continent that is rich and diverse in its, not just in its cultures, in its birthing practices. So this is going to be a quite vast one, but I'm going to do my best to shrink it as much as possible. Across the whole of Africa, birthing is seen as a very, very communal thing. Regardless of what area, north, south, east, west, if you're talking about Nigeria or you're talking about Namibia, or you're talking about South Africa or you're talking about South Sudan, it doesn't matter. It is in Africa in general a very, very communal thing, because it's a time where women come together to support one another. Now, I can say this hands-on because I have many experiences. I saw these things with my own eyes. I was part of these things in some cases, and I see the communal thing. Now, over time, the modernization has changed a lot of things, but there are still people who hold on to this originality, just like the Aborigines as well. A typical example is in West African communities, the traditional midwife plays dual role. So she's a midwife on one hand. On the other hand, she is also a spiritual guide. So she's a birth expert and she's a spiritual guide. This means, therefore, she would do things like herbal medicine, rituals, dance, whatever she has to do, support the woman through the birthing process. So through the whole labor, thinking about the rituals that has to be done. This is also very similar, lest I forget, with some areas like the Southern America or Central America. They also do this right, but that will be on another video altogether, okay? Let's just hammer on this West African rite for now. And so in my questioning and, digging deep, I came to realize that they have come to that understanding that the reason why these rituals are done and by this certain person is because the woman is connected to the spiritual realm. So both the physical and the spiritual realm. And it's a very, very sacred time. In the East African, the Maasai, to be precise, that's where I dabbled into a bit more. You see that the people sort of really have specific birthing position. They're very concerned about the birthing position. So they are often upright in their position when they're birthing. They are not like the typical Nigeria or the Ghana one that is squatting or kneeling. Well, today they are often on their back, but that used to be the way. But in the Maasai people, the Eastern Africans are mostly squatting or they're holding on something, to pull their weight down. Understanding why this is done, I've really come to realize that the reason they do this is because the gravity and the inner instinct of a woman is highly, highly connected. They know what to do at this time because they listen to their instincts and so on. But if you want to compare this today, what they do, the Maasai people or the Maasai women do to today's modern medicine, you see that it's a whole lot of contrary, because women are meant to lay on the back. Well, there are hospitals, or I have worked in hospitals where they have some birthing position that you could squat and so on. And midwives are seriously advocating for these things, that in the hospital should have this position kind of birth for them to make their life easier. But in the normal sense, it's not really the case. It's more on the staying on the bed position because you have to be controlled. I want to compare what the Maasai women are doing and what is being done today in the hospital. It's two different things altogether. Where women in the hospital are expected to lie on their back, and this does not align to their needs. Now, this is not to say that in the hospital women cannot go on their knees or squat or something. But then in a norm, I think about 50, if not 80%, women are going to be birthing laying on their back because there are medical interventions that has to take place. Unless the midwife in the hospitals are standing on their ground, which they are really doing, I must confess. I know countries where midwives are really advocating seriously that their women have the kind of position, whether they're holding on something, squatting, leaning, or in the pool. But again, because they have some, interventions to do, this makes it really difficult to give the woman the needs that her body really has to get. Therefore, today, While many women are still giving birth traditionally, others are moving on to the modern day medical system, which I totally understand, right? So there has been good propagandas about the birthing system of the traditional midwife, or the midwife who is birthing at home or not being in the hospital, and it's expected from these women, or it is assumed that when they go to the hospital, they feel safe. Now, I must say here that as a midwife, I would tell you that at times why I would personally refer a woman to a hospital, many a times I've done that, but I do not think that hospital is the best place for a woman to give birth. By the way, they're not sick. Hospital is for sick people. A pregnant person isn't sick. No, she's not. This therefore brings challenges that lies in the medical intervention, balancing with the cultural and the spiritual significance that women are supposed to go through during childbirth. Now, let's get something really clear here. There is no denial that the incredible medicine and the modern day medical interventions have saved countless lives when it comes to the birthing field. However, though, the clinical birth sort of rip women of their personal well-being, whereby women cannot tap onto the spiritual and cultural path of giving birth. And many women see this as abuse because as time goes on, we all know that these things can create some sort of trauma. And over the years, we might cover it and act like it never happened, but then some women that have met 20 years, 30 years later, can't not stop speaking about them because it is a trauma, right? It affects them, and when anything touches it, the wound opens. Contrast though, the ancestral and traditional birthing, whether in the Aboriginal setting or in the traditional African setting, puts a woman and a child and a community as a whole. So it's not a segment, it's a being, it's a one wholeness. And I think that's really the beauty of everything, where you would see different cultures. Like I said, in the Maasai culture, you see this whole thing of how a woman will be guiding another woman through it, telling her how to breathe, the positions she should take, or she would be guided into listening to her instinct to understand the kind of position she should take. If you're looking at it from the Nigerian sector, a woman that gives birth is not seen as a woman that just gave birth. It's seen like a community as just giving birth. In Nigerian sector, when a woman gives birth, there might be even a turn where women take different turns to go and take care of this woman. Is a common term known as Omugo in Nigerian sector. I can speak about this a whole day because it's something I have researched really deeply on, and I really appreciate it because I happen to be fortunate enough to have my mother be around during my childbirth. So Omugo, I enjoyed it. In this whole community setting, this teaches us to be able to, listen to our body's innate needs, to our ancestral wisdom. And also to surrender ourselves with support and view birthing as a transformative process. I like to say that birthing is that kind of pain that you want to have because at the end of the tunnel, you smile, you have a baby, you create a life at the end of the day. One area where the modern system can learn from the ancestral practices of birthing is the postpartum care. I mean, the postpartum care, especially in the Western world, is done extremely different from many other cultures. I can say that because I have been in the Western cultures, in African, and in other parts of the world, in Oceanias and so on. I've experienced that firsthand. That being said, a typical example, look at Nigeria, for example, is something they call Omugo. Omugo is a process where when a woman gives birth, she is being cared for. Somebody comes to take care of all the house chores. Omugo is a time where the mother is only allowed to do one thing: eat, sleep, breastfeed. And she wasn't allowed to do any other thing. She was fed, they gave her the kind of food she needs, the herbs that she would need to clean her body, to recover actually after the birthing period. Can you imagine what life would be that if women were given the opportunity to see this as a normal life after childbirth? This will make the postpartum depression diminish as much as, I would say, 90%, because postpartum depression, or what they call baby blues, but the extended version of baby blues, is also a situation because the women never really have time to recooperate, to get themselves back after the birth before they go into the hustling life that they go through after birth. In the society, it's expected that the woman go back to birth sometimes 8 weeks, sometimes 12 weeks. I really cannot understand that because you want to think of a body which has taken a whole transformation process for 9 months to get back to work after 6 months or 3 months. It's really, really astonishing. Now, I know there are countries that this is not the case. Austria, for example, you could stay home up to 2 or 3 years, and that is really kudos to Austria for that. Respect. Many European countries are like that, but this is not the case of everybody. by combining both the medical and ancestral part, we'll see that this whole thing, if we come to intermarry each other, it will be very, very meaningful for women in the childbirth process, and it will make them have a more value of themselves and love and compassion for their babies. This whole thing begs to the question, why should we then consider reclaiming the ancestral way of birthing? I strongly believe that these can be intermarried, intercooperated, whatever English language word you want to use for it, in the medical system that we have today. And why is it important? Firstly, it reminds us of the power of the community. A community cannot scatter unless there is a division. And when people come together, there is power, right? But I strongly believe that birthing process is not supposed to be an isolated process. Even animals, if you see an animal giving birth, there are other animals around. Okay, so I don't think so. This is my own opinion. What you think is different is okay. Just write a comment below and tell me what you think. Secondly, the traditional way or the ancestral way of giving birth encourages us to trust our body and the innate wisdom that it has. This is something we have forgotten so much, that we now depend so much on the medical field, which is not a bad thing that we have the medical field and we depend on that. What happens is that we lose who we are and we become dependent. And that shouldn't be the case. Thousands of years, women had birthed with strength and resilience, and through the guide and through the support system of the community and through their own instinct. And this has been passed down from generation to generation. This is, again, not only in humans, but even in animals. It is what it is. That's the way it is. We accept it. When we reconnect with this wisdom, it helps us to approach birth with confidence and not with fear. Birthing is not about the body. It's about the spirit, the mind, and the heart. There's a book I would really recommend for everybody to read, Hearts on Hand or Hearts of Hand by Elizabeth Davis. It's mind-blowing if you want to find out this kind of connection. Everything we had said would lead into a more fulfilling connection between the baby and the mother, and an overall well-being during and after the birth. Maybe you're curious to, go about more a holistic birthing plan. Then I would love to hear from you. Thank you very much for joining me today on Inner Compass. Remember, whether you choose a home birth, hospital birth, or anything in between, what is most important is that you feel supported, encouraged, and of course, aligned to your inner wisdom. Until next time, trust your journey and follow your inner compass. I am Lovetti Lafua, and see you in the next episode.